Hello, great ones. Welcome to the Live and Be Great podcast. I'm your host, Latanya Sampson McDonald. I am a life coach and a registered marriage and family therapist associate. And this podcast was created to motivate, educate, and inspire all to live and be great. On today's episode, I want to continue the conversation, as promised, about the stigma of mental health and medication. I hope that you guys enjoyed the previous episode and that you got a lot out of it, because I did share a whole lot, and I do want to apologize to my folks out there who have ADHD, or based off of the last episode, of realizing that you have some of the same symptoms based off of how I explained for the long episode. But the thing is, if you do have it, you get me, like I talked about before, when you have ADHD, you get a topic that you're well versed in, no matter if you're extrovert or introvert, and you can go, okay? And you can go, but it's great information, all right? So, I would say maybe pause it, maybe take notes, you know, if you do, struggle with focusing for a long time and you really want to get the benefit out of this podcast, and they're kind of long, based off of your attention span, don't feel bad about it, okay? Everybody can take use of bettering their focus, because based off of your phones and technology and our brains not necessarily being dependent on retaining memory, because we could just Google stuff. You see what I'm saying? um, Everybody could use certain tips to help to maintain their focus and retain the information that they're getting. So please feel free to jot down notes while you are listening to the podcast, should you need it, should your mind wander, if it is too long at times for you, okay? That was my disclaimer. So, continuing the conversation as promised. Okay, so I want to start off with saying that the experience was something. And I promise to talk about that on this particular part of the episode. So the experience of getting on the medication. So, like I said before, that one day, I would say last month, I woke up and I told my husband that I was going to give life my best shot. Because, the week prior, I don't know if I was watching something, reading something, listening to something that led up to that day. But, it was one of those days where I guess it was a reset, for me. And I talked about reset days for people with ADHD, depression, and anxiety, that combination. And beforehand, leading up to that, sorry if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but leading up to that, I had the moments, the trauma residuals, the trauma withdrawal, and also the stuff that I hadn't faced yet about myself, and what I've gone through, right? And actually going through the stories, it was pretty painful because it was like I was reliving the trauma that I normalized. Like some of it, was addressed, but there were other parts that I wasn't able to piece together that were still affecting me. And then that coupled with the amount of it. So going through that experience and waking up one day, I just felt the need to tell my husband that, I've decided to give life my best shot. Okay? Not putting any limits on myself and deciding to receive whatever support I can get, because why not? I deserve it. And I tell my clients all the time, even people in my consultation that sign up for the free consultation, that I'm proud of them for choosing them, and that it's not about needing the help. It's about receiving the support that you deserve. You deserve, right? And I can't say that enough, and you're going to hear me say it a million times as you listen to this podcast, in hopes that it'll stick, because repetition is key, right? With the things that I really, really want people to understand, right? And not just for people, for myself. Because when I am talking and I am in the process of helping someone heal, it's not just for them. It's definitely for me. The message is oftentimes for the messenger. Please believe that as well. But I wanted to full force be about what I talk about. So I made the decision, like, I'm going to love me through this lifetime, and really, really take it seriously as far as being who I want to be as a person. Being happy, right? I am the deciding factor when it comes to my life and how things affect me. Okay, so I got a new therapist. I would say January, February, March. In March, I believe. No, end of February, I got a new therapist here, which is awesome. She's awesome. And that process was great because I was happy to be in therapy again and kind of have that accountability and that support. So fast forward to that day, I decided to give life my best shot, right? And having those thoughts, like choosing not to let those thoughts of, but I want to save the world. What's the purpose of, doing this if I can't save the world? I was like, this is a choice. Being angry, having stress, all of that is a choice, okay? When you really, really look at it, you choosing to stress out about certain things. You're choosing to carry on that anger. You're choosing to let certain things affect you to the point that it debilitates you, right? When you don't put things in place to help you get out of that, right? To stay accountable for you. You're choosing. You see what I'm saying? Yes, I understand. Like, for example, when parents say certain things to you, or somebody real close, or your spouse or your child say certain things to you, it hits you differently than a stranger. And sometimes you can't really, it's hard to really pinpoint or step into the mode of controlling it and seeing it as support or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it ain't support, right? Sometimes it is just very harsh and not helpful, okay? But the lingering effects, right? If you haven't mastered how to brush that off, right? Or to set up certain boundaries when you're triggered, right? Then you got to make a decision to get help for that. And that's what I mean by it's a choice to stay in it or to get out of it or to work on it. It's a choice. Okay? So I made the choice. Then I'm going to push harder, but with all the support that I can get. So I went to my primary care physician, and my previous appointment, my blood pressure was kind of high. And that previous appointment was me, I picked the primary care physician, your initial visit. I did that, sort of checkup thing, and my blood pressure was kind of high for the first time in my life, right? See, that shows the seriousness of what I'm talking about, because I've never had high blood pressure ever. No, actually, I lied. I had blood pressure when I was 8. 8 years old. And that was probably based on trauma, right? And me being an empath, and when something's wrong with somebody or somebody has a certain type of energy, I can feel it, right? And I have yet to master how to not feel it, right, in my body, and not get anxiety when it comes to certain things, and it depends on the person as well, right? But I ate, and I just was like, maybe I'm eating too much popcorn, because I remember eating a lot of popcorn around that time. So I thought it was the salt. Of course, that's usually the first thing when you have high blood pressure, but I don't know. I've had some weird stuff that had to do with stress. I've also had shingles, and shingles is usually found in the elderly. I had it when I was in middle school. Okay. And my mom didn't know what it was. She just like, maybe you're not, washing enough, because she didn't, know what it looked like. But when I got to the doctor, they was just like, you got shingles. Like, we don't understand. Like, what are you going through in middle school that you have shingles? And I do remember around that time, I had an aunt who I looked at as my grandmother on my mom's side, because my mom's mom had passed away when my mom was 5, so I never got to meet her, and I look exactly like her. I'm gonna post a picture of her on our social media one day so y'all can see. And I think she's also a Pisces. I have to double check my mom's mother, but she passed away when she was 26, and my mom was 5 years old. So there was this aunt who's also a Pisces. Ha ha ha. Love her, but that was more of a mother figure and a grandmother figure to us. Like, she was just awesome to us, me and my siblings, and she was my favorite. Okay, but she was in the hospital when I was in middle school, and my mom had went to go, check on her and try to take care of her and look after her while she was in the hospital. And I think she went in for, they said she had a lump somewhere, and I think they was trying to say that she had some type of cancer. But anyways, she ended up, my mom was gone for a long time. Okay, so I didn't have my mom, so I was kind of stressed out about the situation and nervous about how it would go, because I was so close to my great aunt. So, and then I wasn't doing well in math, and in school at the time. So when my mom came back to collect us, to go down, because my great aunt had gotten worse, um, when she came down to get us, that's when we went to the doctor and they told me that I had shingles. Okay. So I've had, things affect my body from a long time ago. When it came to stress. Okay, so sorry if I went on a little tangent. I apologize. Remember the tips. Okay, pause the podcast, come back to it, take notes, whatever you need to do. Okay, but that was the only time like that I remember having high blood pressure. So when I went this back to the doctor this time, and they said it, I was like, how I don't have the same amount of stress, the same type of stress, but now I have high blood pressure? What's going on? I've had stressful jobs, dangerous situations, and all that. That whole entire time I had no high blood pressure. So how? Now that I'm free, am I having high blood pressure? But I want to attribute it to the fact of this next journey of the healing process and having that time with myself and really addressing it, and not, I guess, setting up enough boundaries to protect myself, from certain energies from people, right, or certain situations. I think that is what kicked up the stress, and the overwhelmingness of the whole situation. Sorry if that's a bit confusing. I'll say it better, at some point, but hopefully you understand. But anyways, so I came back and my blood pressure was fine this time. So they were like, is there anything else that you need us to do? So I said, when I take my test, I would like special accommodations for my license exam, right? Because the first time I took it, I was interrupted twice and I ended up missing it by 1 point, right? But there was a lot going on, stuff going on with my mom. Like 2 days before her being rushed to the emergency room, I had a nightmare when all my darn trauma came back to me when I wasn't even thinking about it. Like I was just focused on my test, but it was the morning before the test. And then during the test, I was interrupted twice. One time the first time the test administrator came to me and was like, hey, what are you doing? Your computer's not working, because everybody else, their computer has frozen. But I was like, like, this is before the whole diagnosis situation. This is beforehand, when I took the test, and I was like, no, my computer's fine. So that threw me off, right? Because with ADHD, if you're focused, if you finally get that focus, and any little thing can disturb it. Okay, and then it's horrible. It's like a downward spiral, right? So he ended up taking all the rest of the test takers out of the room, and then when they came back, of course it was kind of noisy and loud. But when they came back, a different test administrator came over and attempted to push the button to turn off my computer. Okay, and the other administrator had to run over and snatch her hand because she wasn't listening to me when I said, please stop. She didn't hear me because she was doing it so quickly. He had to run over there and grab her hand. So that threw me off so bad that I ran out of time for the test. Last 30, 40 questions, I couldn't even read because I was running out of time. Test is 4 hours. Couldn't even read the last 40 questions. So I had to just click stuff. I didn't even read them, right? And the fact that I only missed it by 1 point shows that I would have passed it had I not had all of those distractions, right? So hence, back to the doctor's appointment, I said, and talking with my therapist, which I am going to be able to retake the test for free. I don't have to resubmit because it was their fault that I didn't pass it, the test administrators, because they distracted me, right? But I realized that I needed special accommodations. And this is the thing about not really being well-versed in advocating for yourself, And yes, it does. I have to relate it back to me being a Black woman. Yes, yes, yes. We don't advocate for ourselves because a lot of times we're not believed, and people just, when we show up, they assume that we already have it together no matter what. So you don't really ask for help, when that type of pressure is put onto you, and based off of our trauma, like I talked about in the previous episode, the type of trauma that has you not wanting or being afraid to ask for help, or feeling like you can't, ask for help, right? Um, so I was like, okay, I'm going to get special accommodations. So I talked to my therapist about it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to bring it up to my new primary care physician so I can get special test accommodations the next time I take it. And I am going to be able to take it for free, like I said before. But I want to make sure I have the support that I need to pass this test, right? Because I didn't know it previously. Well, I knew, but like I said, I was in that mind state that maybe I don't need it, or maybe, feeling like I was going to be looked at a certain way if I'm asking for it, right? A whole bunch of mental gymnastics that I had to learn to work through, okay? But talked to the primary care physician, and I said, okay, my therapist is putting something together so I could get special accommodations. So I need also support from you guys with getting these special accommodations for my test, right? So then they started to ask me, what do you have? And I was like, I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. And I have anxiety because a lot of times when I wake up, my heart is racing, or my mind will ramble at night, just overthinking stuff and being stressed out, right? So they were like, let me give you an assessment, right? So they gave me the assessment, and they gave me two. And I thought that they would just assess me for the ADHD because, of course, I ran down my symptoms that I've had since I was a little girl, right? And I wasn't even thinking about medication at the time. I wasn't. I was just thinking about, okay, they're going to write this letter to prove after I do this assessment that I have these diagnoses, and that'll be it, right? So I take the assessments, and the doctor comes back, and they're like, I feel like you got depression as well as the ADHD and the anxiety. So I want to prescribe you something for it. Are you okay with that? And I said, yeah. Like, it was, y'all, when I said it was a no-brainer, like, it was, I didn't take no time to think about it. Because remember, I made the decision, point blank in the period, that I was going to give life my best shot. And I'm going to utilize every last bit of support because I deserve it. So I'm going to be about what I say I'm about. Okay? So they prescribed me Adderall for the ADHD, right, to help me focus. They prescribed me Zoloft for the depression and anxiety. So, as well as some allergy medication and things of that nature, because I'm back in the South, okay, and I have really bad allergies. So I told my husband, and he was like, that's awesome, I'm glad you have something to support, because he's used to the whole medication thing. I wasn't, because I'm somebody that don't drink, that don't smoke. So he was also kind of shocked, I'm sure that I was like, okay, I'm going to do it, right? So I did it, and the first day I was on it, I had heart palpitations, okay? And not only did I have heart palpitations, but I didn't really pay attention to it because usually in the spring, I get gas in my chest for some reason. I have no idea. So I would feel the movement and I would burp afterwards. So I didn't take nothing of it. But when I had my headphones in, I could hear my heartbeat, right? So I'm like, I wonder if these are the palpitations, right? And then when you research, because I did my research, crazy part about it, I researched after I took the medication. Don't do that. Research before. Research before, or talk with your therapist about it, or your life coach, or whoever, your physician, beforehand, right? But I did my research afterwards. Okay, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to schedule an appointment for the doctor so I could just get checked out and be sure that I'm safe. But before then, that day, I saw that one of the side effects was you're going to be hyper focused, and you're going to be hyper focused sometimes on things you have no business hyper focusing on. That first day on it, I was deleting emails from every mailbox from 6 o'clock in the morning, okay, to 6 o'clock at night. Couldn't move, didn't eat. My husband came, checked on me, and I was like, I can't get up. In my mind, I was like, get up, okay? And I'm not trying to scare y'all, but I'm just trying to be truthful. Because this might not affect other people in the same way. But, with anything that you're introducing your body that is new, even a new workout, your body is going to react a certain way. Period. Okay? New sleep patterns, new fragrances. Anything that you introduce new, there's going to be a reaction. Period. That's what anything in life. Okay? There's going to be a reaction to it that is going to be different and might throw you off a little bit. Okay? So I was like, I can't do this again. So I need to set some reminders to get up, eat, do it. So I set I don't know how many reminders the next day so I could have a better hold of my day. To really do what I need to do. Okay. So I also introduced new habits that I wanted to learn. I was reading certain books, learning new skills. I decided, since I am going to be hyper focused, let me schedule my day so I can be focused on things that's actually going to help me. Right. And that was so helpful. And also, when it came to, the Zoloft, right? Because that was the Adderall effects, right? The Zoloft. I was able to have a conversation with my mom without yelling and tell her that, hey, I'm on medication now. And of course, her response, why do you need medication? Whatever, insensitive stuff. It can be a lot of the times. But I didn't react, right? I was just like, okay, she is who she is. I'm going to change the subject. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to get off the phone. It was that simple. No thought. And I was like, we got to stay. We got to stay on this, right? So the benefits, I would say, overall, it outweighed the side effects, right? Because also I had sensitivity to light, sensitivity to teeth. My teeth were sensitive. And it dries you out. You got to drink a lot of water, right? So, and a lot of times you forget to eat, okay? So you have to really, really have that accountability on the side, right? Which moves me to my next point. The emphasis of why you need to have a therapist during this process. Okay? Okay, so the accountability part, right? The therapist, you let them know, all right, that, okay, I'm on medication I decided to get. And a lot of times, how you get the medication, your therapist can suggest it, right? Or if you have a psychologist, they can actually prescribe it, right? And psychiatrists also can prescribe it, but also your doctors can prescribe it. So the therapist can diagnose you, right? But if you already have a diagnosis and your therapist is just a therapist or a counselor or a life coach, then they can coordinate care with your primary care physician. But most of the time, you can tell your primary care physician about your symptoms and they can prescribe it for you. But anyways, when you have a therapist or a life coach or a healer that is, familiar with, medications and prescribing, and not necessarily prescribing, but diagnosing and things of that nature, or just helping people heal, they help you stay accountable for the things that get altered, especially if you're truthful. So I would tell my therapist about my sleep, or you should tell your therapist about your eating habits, and they can help come up with realistic systems to make sure that your overall health is together during the process of healing. Okay, so the medication stabilizer, right? So you can receive what you need to receive and get certain things done that benefit you, but in conjunction with a coach or a therapist is you're going to get the best benefit, because you don't want to just depend on the medication, because it's not a cure, right? It doesn't cure it. It doesn't. Like, it helps, with certain symptoms of the diagnosis if you have one, but it's not a cure. Okay, so I can't emphasize that enough. But the accountability and the support is because you have these diagnoses for a reason, and 9 times out of 10 it's based off of your childhood trauma. So the key is always going to be, let me go to the source of why I am here today, why I have these things and how they've affected my life, right? And let me also tell you, in order for it to be a diagnosis, it has to be something that affects either your relationships, your job, or your school, or your health, right? And that makes it a diagnosis. For me, it was affecting my relationships, okay, my health, my mental health, and my physical health, in my overall environment, right? That's what that's how it was affecting me, okay? Because when it came to, getting certain important things done, like I said, the coaching part, the therapeutic part, I can do in my sleep. But I also am a business owner. When it came to doing the business part, I got overwhelmed and I put it off, right? ADHDers, number one for procrastinating, right? And it's not necessarily that we are lazy, it's that we get so overwhelmed with the task that it can, paralyze us to where we feel like we can't move. So we're just like, okay, I'll put it off till tomorrow, till I can do it, And a lot of times it's important things, and you can't do that. You can't do that in life, right? So I was like, I got to do something about it. But that's that's the importance of, if you do decide to take medication, make sure you have a therapist. I prefer you have a therapist first, right? Now, let me think of some other coping skills, because that was a reset, right? That was definitely a reset for me to go ahead and, take the doctor up on it and be like, okay, I'm going to take these medications. Now, the side effects, they were gone in 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they're gone. I don't have the palpitations anymore. I did go to the doctor because I was concerned. I would say the second week of taking, second or third week of taking it, and I was still having the palpitations and the gas, and the dry mouth and all of that stuff from not drinking enough water. I went, and there was a nurse, right? And she came in to do an EKG and check my blood pressure again, right? Because I was concerned about the heart palpitations, and I wasn't quite sure. And she was like, yeah, you're on Adderall? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, I take the same thing. And I had heart palpitations, but my life is so different. I just deal with it, and I have the gas. And she's like, I just deal with it. And she told me that she's on way more medications than me. Um, so to help her, right? And of course, she was white because it's not very common that you see people of color um, admit, or even decide, even though they're self-medicating, right? But the fact that she shared that with me, that was very supportive. But they did the EKG, everything was fine, and after 2 weeks, it was done, right? So if it lasts longer than 2 weeks, okay, if it lasts longer than 2 weeks, then go ahead and see your primary care physician. And then also, if you don't like how a certain medication makes you feel, they can switch it out, right? They can switch it out. You can try something different. Um, there are other options, right? So when it comes to, I would say, the stigma around taking medication as well, something else I wanted to talk on was the fact that people self-medicate already, right? If you find yourself smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, um, going through a tub of ice cream, overexerting yourself at the gym, uh, doing any type of, I would say, addiction, right? If you find yourself watching YouTube for 10, 15 hours, or not even that long, but staying up all night to where it's interrupting your sleep, right? That's an addiction. Gambling, right? That's an addiction. Okay. um all the stuff that I named, like that, because it makes you feel good and it takes you away from the feelings that you don't want to feel, that you need to address and heal from, right? It's an addiction, okay? And you're not using it in the right way, okay? So, yeah, you're not using that stress reliever or that coping skill in the proper way, right? When you feel like you need to do it every day, or it's taking you away from certain important tasks and you're spending too much time doing it, right? Or you're just using it to not deal with you, if you're honest about what you go through, right? That's why I do have a heart for people who are addicts. Because they're hurt people, and it has nothing to do with, if they got kids and they need to fight for their kids and not be this way or not be that way. Yeah, that's true, but internally they're going through something, right? And I can be empathetic to that. They don't want to feel that pain because it hurts too bad, right? I get it. Okay. But like I said, people self-medicate anyway. So the difference is that you are having somebody actually monitor dosages versus going to the weed guy and just getting your usual. You get what I'm saying? Not saying that, marijuana can't be helpful, because it can, especially if it's prescribed. Especially if you have a doctor that knows how much, and give you enough and tell you when to do it in enough times so that it can actually help you, and it's not okay, I'm trying to avoid the underlying source of why I have anxiety, the depression, or whatever diagnosis that you have. Okay. So it's important to have someone there that is really monitoring you. So it's not something that is going to bite you in the behind later because you're avoiding addressing what got you in that mental state in the first place. Okay. So if you're going to self-medicate, you should not have any issues with taking medications. Like, especially if you're already doing it. Because if you're already drinking, some people just drink to go to sleep. Some people are in stressful homes, and they are drinking to cope. Some people, they, or smoking or whatever, the cigarettes, have to go through a pack of cigarettes a day because they're stressed out, okay? Especially my Black people who have the highest rate of smoking nicotine. My babies is anxious and stressed, and I know why, okay? Because they still got to do with this thing called life and be Black on top of it. All right? Okay. We know. I understand that and I validate that. But there's nothing wrong with having the support that you need. And, if your doctor or your therapist suggests medication, right? Try it and just see. And I respect the fact that, some people want to see, if this is their first time trying therapy, that they want to see what they can do with the therapy first, right? Before they get on medication. Okay? So that's also what I advocate with my clients. I see how they are a couple months in. And sometimes the first session, if I'm seeing a lot of patterns of certain symptoms, right, that is affecting their life, I might ask them, what did they feel about taking medication, and have they ever taken it in the past? And they'll let me know, right? But if I've had certain clients for at least 6 to 7 months, and I'm seeing that, a depression, anxiety, or whatever is now interfering with this private space in the healing journey, is still interfering with them getting the most out of treatment and out of life in general, then I'm going to go ahead and suggest that they try it, okay? Just to see. And if they don't want to, they don't have to, right? We got to change our strategy, and you have that option, right? You don't have to be on medication if you don't want to. But what I preface is as, like I said, you deserve the support. You do. So why not? Okay? And I am about what I say I'm about. So you guys are getting a treat with being able to be on this journey with me and just see what it does for me. Yes, certain things have different effects on different people, but I want you to know your options no matter what. And I want you to know the truth about certain things that affect our mental health and our overall life in general, that we need to really, really be educated on and see. You see what I'm saying? The different things that can help us grow and really have the life that we want. Okay? So this podcast is long again. I apologize. Okay? So we're going to have to make a part 3. We're going to have to make a part 3. Okay? And you guys are going to love it. And there I will get to talk about making your diagnosis a superpower. Okay? I will do that for you. All right? Thank you guys for being on this journey with me yet again. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, please go listen to it. This is your first time listening to me. I got a lot of stuff, okay? A lot of helpful tips on life in general. So even though I have old podcasts, listen, there's gems in every last one of them. I promise you, you won't be disappointed, okay? So I'll see you guys next time for part 3 of this conversation. The Live and Be Great podcast will be airing every other Friday. If you have truly enjoyed this podcast, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving Live and Be Great a chance. Please feel free to share, like, give a review, subscribe on whichever platform that you're listening to right now, on iTunes or Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, as well as Google Play. The Live and Be Great podcast is strictly crowdfunded, so if you are interested in becoming a supporter, you can click the link in the description, or you can go to liveandbegreat.com and scroll to the bottom and donate to the Live and Be Great podcast today, so I can continue to give you good and motivational content. Thank you all for listening, and don't forget to give yourself permission to live and be great.